It's Jackson. How's it going? We're super excited today to have you out here. We're going to talk about some fantasy football and things of your season's gone to shit, or you're really loving the season and you're just happy staying still. Bringing in Mind of Ken today to help me talk about some things.
What's up?
What's going on, man?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm in 8 fantasy leagues. Kenny
lot.
and I are in 3 together, and so talk about that. You know, they say like being in 8 leagues, how do you even do it? I don't know sometimes. Man, it's like a second job because you're paying attention to so much. Lots of small things like, oh, a random person did really good X week.
Yeah.
So if you're not like first to get them on the waiver or whatever. But yeah, this one I'm actually undefeated in this league. So I made a trade. Go through this one,
Okay.
who I received and who I gave away.
This is from week 5. You traded away Alan Lazard and James Conner,
Mm-hmm.
and then you received Antonio Gibson and Keenan Allen.
Mm.
So right off the bat, I like the players that you got
Okay.
over the players that you traded.
Mm-hmm.
I know Lazard is technically he's like the receiver 1
Yeah.
for Green Bay, but just because Aaron Rodgers is all about trust and like making sure you know the offense and everything,
Mm-hmm.
I still think that if you just switch the receivers, you're getting Keenan for Lazard. Keenan's an upgrade, and when he's healthy, he's like, he's been a top 10, top 15 receiver for the past few years.
Right, and you said the key kicker there when he's healthy. It's
Yeah.
been a tough one this year. He finally came back, I think, last week. He's always going into the new week questionable. You're like, man, is he gonna play? But when he plays, he's top notch. Yeah, so I think that's kind of the main part of the trade is I was trying to get Lazard for Keenan Allen and kind of doing whatever I had to do. I also think the James Conner for Antonio Gibson, pretty even. James Conner's been hurt
Yeah.
as well, so maybe like both of these kind of have injuries to them. Antonio Gibson lost a little value. Brian Robinson came back from the beginning of the season injury, so
But I think they're starting to like at first immediately when Brian Robinson came back, like he was the number 1 guy, but they're starting to have Gibson come back into the offense as kind of like that change of pace, kind of like what J.D. McKissick is doing. And I think Gibson still can be that like receiving back, change of pace, like spell like some carries from Robinson. Robinson hasn't really done anything too crazy to kind of be like, oh,
Yeah.
he's the workhorse guy
Yeah.
and everything. So to be honest, I think you upgraded in like both
Both spots.
positions. So
Okay.
I'd go with 2 thumbs up for this.
nice. Yeah, I mean, Antonio Gibson, like you said, the receiving part's huge in a PPR league. The one thing is he doesn't get a lot of carries, but his yards per carry is a lot. Like I think he's been getting like big yardage games, but even in his small amounts of touches. So the first 1-for-1 trade, not multiple people. Again, this is a scenario where I had my quarterback situated. I had Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Just looking to get more depth. So I traded away Tom Brady for Devonta Smith. Any initial thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, you said you have. I always value like receivers, running backs higher than quarterbacks anyway. So like Brady, last year he was, I think he was a top 10 QB or top 15, but this year it's not looking like he will be.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like that mid-level. And to be honest, like I think you could get a quarterback on the waiver wire like as a backup that is producing like the same amount of points or similar like production that Tom has been doing this year, and then you get Devonta Smith, which is he's pretty good too. So I think in terms of getting like receiver depth, I like this trade. I think Rodgers will figure it out. I think Brady will probably figure it out too. But since you already have like Aaron Rodgers, you can just get a backup quarterback and then have Smith as like a flex play.
Totally. And the Eagles are a high-powered offense, man. Jalen Hurts is looking really good. So Devontae Smith has some low weeks, but he has those really, really big weeks. Because like this week it was all A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith didn't really do much. So, that happens. I think there's a lot of things there. And also kind of got lucky with, I think Tom Brady's dealing with a lot of personal things. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe he's going to come back really strong after these next couple of weeks, fire in his belly. But yeah, that's that trade.
Yeah, I think it's a good trade.
Cool. Three for three. Oh, this was like week 2.
Week 2. Okay.
Yeah, this was early on with my dad. See here. My dad's a huge Chiefs fan, so I was just playing into that emotion. And it's actually it was an auction league for this one. So when Patrick Mahomes came on the draft board, I knew I was just gonna like really bid high, bid up, just to get a trade with my dad.
Oh, because he loves.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it worked. You know, like right away I was going after, hey, you want Patrick Mahomes. And so I think I paid like $30 for him in the auction or something like that. So in this trade, Patrick Mahomes, and then the other two were kind of just extra throw-ins because I like the bigger trades. Mike Davis at running back, you know, he for the Ravens, he wasn't really getting a lot of touches, and they were still figuring out. And then I think he ended up getting hurt.
I think week 2, everyone thought, like most of like the professional analysts would say that Mike Davis was going to be the clear number 1 guy. Like that's someone to look for the first couple of weeks before Dobbins and Gus Edwards came back. But it ended up being Kenyon Drake, so that was kind of a flop.
Yeah, and then they got Justice Hall. I mean, there's a lot going on in that. And then Lamar Jackson taking touches too.
Yeah, and he takes away from that backfield.
And the last part of the trade was Joshua Palmer for the receiver for the Chargers. In return, I received Gabe Davis, Dameon Pierce, which was a huge one. It's before he like really started exploding. And in all of my drafts, I was like trying to get Dameon Pierce, and then Tom Brady. So then that's the trade I just talked about. I used Tom Brady for another trade, so it's been nice.
Okay, so
this is like a 2-part trade. This was the first part of the trade that got me now Devontae Smith, as you saw.
And then you had Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes initially.
Yeah.
And then you basically traded Mahomes to get more depth. Like Gabe Davis has been playing really well. Like he's the receiver 2 for the Bills, but he scores like everything. Like he's still somehow like gets a lot of points and everything, which I think they're playing tonight, so we'll see how he does. But I think he's been doing pretty well compared to Palmer.
Yeah, he's funny to me. He's like not getting a ton of catches, but like big explosive plays.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of weeks when I had him. He had that one where he got like a 96-yard touchdown, and then he had 3 catches, 150 yards. I'm like,
2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's high power, and it helps you. It wins you week.
But he does that. That's I think the one knock on him is like, he doesn't get that many receptions. He's all touchdown dependent, but he's still scoring those touchdowns. So I think if you just look at it across the board, that's an upgrade from Palmer. And then you got Pierce, like you said, he's basically a low-end running back 1, RB2. So that's an upgrade over Mike Davis, who isn't really playing anymore for the Ravens. And then Brady, I know he's not on your team anymore, but you basically switched him out for Devonta Smith almost. So you got like a lot of depth.
Yeah, it ended up being very valuable. I started off the year pretty slow. And, maybe if I had Patrick Mahomes, I could have won a couple of those early on games. But now the depth of he ended up dropping Joshua Palmer and Mike Davis. So it was basically a 3-for-1.
Yeah.
Early on in the season, pretty strong.
Right.
Ooh. Okay. Oh, yeah. These ones are getting interesting because, we're still really starting to see the meat and potatoes of these. This one, just happened last week. David Montgomery, he started off the year really strong. And then I got Devontae Smith. So this is another league. And in return, I gave up a lot. Travis Etienne, Smith-Schuster, and Keenan Allen. So this one, it's still unfolding. Juju had a big week last week, but before that wasn't really doing a lot. Etienne is now like the sole guy at Jacksonville, and he's got Keenan Allen. So I gave up. This one is tough.
This one's tough. I mean, Montgomery, if you need like running back depth, he's that's like good to help bolster that up. Was this before the James Robinson trade?
Yeah, before.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate. Yeah. Timing.
I think right after we traded, there went James Robinson, but I should have kind of known Etienne that that's the one that was like you draft from the beginning because this is his first year really because he was out all year last year. and the connection between him and Trevor Lawrence is pretty strong.
Yeah, Etienne's looking pretty good, but like you got Devonta Smith, which I think it's just his like boom weeks are kind of sporadic, so he'll have a couple duds and then have like a 20-30 point game.
Yeah.
So I think he's still a good flex option. Juju, he's starting to pick it up, but it's interesting too because person you traded, they dropped Kadarius Toney.
I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh man, I could have added him into the mix.
Into the trade because like Tony at the time, he wasn't doing anything for the Giants, so it made sense to drop him. But now this is week 8, so this was from week 7. Within that week, the Chiefs are currently on the bye, but they just traded for Kadarius Toney, right? So that could kind of eat at Juju's production. So
I mean it's an okay trade. This is probably the worst trade that I did. I do think that Smith and Montgomery can have big weeks. Khalil Herbert's really eaten into David Montgomery's touches, especially the touchdowns. They put Herbert in at the goal line.
But I think just and now that Fields is running a lot for the Bears, he's taken away a little bit, but I think Montgomery, like you said, both of those players, Montgomery and Smith, could still be, an RB2 and then or some like potential flex play there.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to Keenan Allen being injury prone, being able to kind of forgo that, and so it's almost a 2-for-2 trade when Keenan Allen's hurt every week. But this one's a down.
Not bad.
Oh, you're giving me half. Okay, you're a nice
but
guy.
Etienne, I'll go.
Oh yeah, Etienne is now like anything. Yeah, he's gonna crush it. So that was a bad one. Can I vote against now?
Veto.
That'd be great. Ooh, this one's a new one too. The third trade in this league. I've been making a lot of moves. The reason I wanted to get these two players is because we're doing a keeper as well. And you get to keep them at the price that you bought them in the auction. So I received in this trade Garrett Wilson and Kenneth Walker. I think this was Kenneth Walker had already become the starter. Rashad Penny was out. He's looking really good. And so both of these guys, under $10 in the auction draft, and that was my really big thing for keeping them for the next year. Gave up Etienne and Cam Akers. Who's basically been a wash this whole year.
Yeah, I just looking at it, the eye test, I like this trade because now that Breece Hall got injured, Garrett Wilson, which we saw today, he was more involved. The Jets started passing more since Zach Wilson came back. So I think Garrett Wilson ended up having a 100-yard game. And you said this is PPR as well? Yeah, so I mean he's gonna have pretty good weeks if it's PPR. And I think it's a toss-up between who's better between Walker and Etienne. So you basically are flipping those two even, I would say. Both of them are really good players. So I think Walker, he was my favorite running back in the draft. And I might be a little biased as a Seahawks fan, but I thought even before Seattle drafted him that he was the best in the class. And then Etienne's good, but you still get that value from Walker. And then, like you said, Akers he's not even playing for the Rams right now. He could be traded, but he
hasn't been traded yet.
He hasn't been traded.
Close.
Couple days left, but even when the games that he played, he didn't look that great. He lost the starting role to Henderson. So, and I like Garrett Wilson, like you said, as a keeper. I think he's going to be a really good receiver.
Yeah. So this trade was all for the keeper. I think there's a couple question marks on this trade. What's going to happen with Elijah Moore on the Jets? He was taking a lot from Garrett Wilson, and I think Zach Wilson hasn't necessarily proven himself yet. There's just a lot of question marks around the Jets offense. I've always been never get Jets players, and
if you do get Garrett Wilson, and then Breece Hall was on a rampage for a while.
Yeah, next year he's gonna be a early pick for sure.
Yeah,
and then the other question mark is what's gonna happen to Cam Akers, who's gonna give him a shot. So yeah, I think
I give this 2 thumbs up for that one.
Okay, cool. Oh, gosh, so many of these are just so recent, and it's crazy because you see all the updates of what's been happening. Received Nick Chubb, Devonta Smith, and Deontay Johnson for Jamar Chase, Zeke Elliott, and Drake London. Man, when this happened, I think my brother was winning by a long shot on the trade. And now that everything that's gone down, Jamar Chase getting hurt, Zeke getting
was out.
hurt, and Tony Pollard going off today, maybe
Yeah, he
taking
did.
his spot. And then Drake London's been mediocre since the beginning of the season, where he was kind of crushing it. I think Drake London will still be top tier, and especially as the number one receiver for Atlanta. But I mean, all things considered, I think this is like looking good for my trade.
I think this is a pretty good trade as well. Like, basically, if you look at it, you trade Chase, who is like a top 5 receiver, for Chubb, who's I think the number one.
Yeah.
Or he's a top 3, top 5 running back right now.
Right.
So like, running backs to me are more valuable than receivers. Like you said, now that Chase is out 4 to 6 weeks,
Yeah.
no, he won't be able to use Chase immediately, where you can use Chubb.
I could use like all 3 of those players, Devonta Smith and Deontay Johnson, great flex players, or even can fill them in at receiver. Now that I lost Drake London, getting those 2 receivers in replace of Drake London, yeah. Zeke had one good week when I traded him, so there's still some to be unfolded there. But that's the last trade, and I really appreciate having you out, man. I think that your fantasy knowledge will get the people loving what you got, and maybe they'll suggest some other ideas we can talk about. I was thinking like something you'd be really good at talking about is rookies, just like you know the rookie class really well. We were just talking about tonight. We were watching the Seahawks game, and they got Kenneth Walker, and then on the defensive end they got Woolen. Yeah. And thank you for tuning in if you made it this far, and like, subscribe, check out Mind of Ken. He's going to be doing new things too, starting more of the podcast style. This is my first podcast.
I think it's going well.
Yeah, it's fun. So you'll probably see a lot of Kenny. I'm the one that got him to like get going on starting a YouTube.
Once you started doing it, I was like, okay. You're like, hey, you should give it a shot, and it's been fun. So, and I like the just talking about fantasy football, talking about sports and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think this is a good format to get into and everything.
I love your layout in the garage.
Hey,
It's a nice little background, but
yeah.
thanks.
So
Kenny.
we'll do more in the future. So.
We'll catch you later. Anything you want to talk about in fantasy football, and Kenny and I are your guy.
Awesome. I forgot you were gonna throw that.